Hi everyone, this is Mami Grass. So today I'm going to demonstrate how I would paint this cherry blossom trees that you can see on my iPad. Okay, so I painted this initially using a smaller Baohong Academy grade watercolor papers. And as you can see, there's major difference here. I made the terrain, the foreground a bit colorful in this section, or in this particular piece, and then I made the mountain a little warm in the color. I'm not sure if I'm gonna duplicate, I will be able to duplicate this one here, but I do intend to just paint the two trees here, the mountain behind the trees, the sky, and the foreground. Okay, so here, this is the photo that I got off Pinterest while I was looking for cherry blossom trees. Okay, so this tutorial class is part of the weekly thing that I have been doing since the start of this month as my gift to fellow homeschooling families. So this is my birth month, so I made classes and recordings for this month's theme. Okay, which is my favorite subjects, or my favorite painting subjects, and one of those would be this cherry blossom trees, or one of those is cherry blossom trees. Okay, so for this class, let me just put this here. I made a sketch, just a rough sketch of the landscape, and I'm gonna put a link in the description box as to the reference drawing, or the drawing that you can also follow. Otherwise, you can also draw on your own. I'm gonna share also the reference to the reference photo at Pinterest. Okay, so for this tutorial, or for this painting, you would need your mixing palettes. I'll be using 3 brushes, one that's synthetic, and you'll find out why I'm gonna use this synthetic brush. Usually I just paint with 2, one small round brush size 6 and one that's size 12, but for today's painting, I'm gonna be using also this synthetic brush. This is cheap synthetic brush by Faber-Castell, or rather by Crayola. I'm gonna use it for something one of the effects that I'll be utilizing for this painting. And then for the colors, I'll be using pink. I think this is Carmine pink, and then John Brilliant number 1. But if you don't have this color, you can also use white. And then if you also have pastel colors, you can also use pastel pink for the cherry blossoms. And then I'm gonna be using blue. I have here French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna and yellow ochre, as well as burnt umber, some yellow, and I think I'll be using also this green, sap green. Okay, so let me just clean my palette because it's a little dirty, and we'll start in a bit. Of course, you also need a water, by the way, and clean rug or clean kitchen towel. Okay, I'll be back in a bit. So yeah, I'm back, and let's start painting. So the first thing that I'm gonna paint, so the reference photo is right in front of me. The first thing that I'm gonna do is to wet the sky area. Okay, and I'm gonna do that here. Okay, so just okay. So this is the drawing. This is the sky area. And then this part here is the mountain behind the trees. Okay, and then this one is the foreground. Okay, so you can see the foreground is a bit bigger. I made it a bit bigger. That was not intentional. I just noticed that just now. But let's work on this, right? I mean, I've already drawn it anyway. Okay, so let me just wet this part, the sky part, we'll try to avoid the mountain area, which is this, the mountain behind the cherry blossom trees. Okay, and then if you also notice, I added this sort of shapes, wobbly shapes here, very irregular shapes. It's to depict the regular bunching of the flowers, or the flowers that are bunching up together. Okay, just so I have an idea where to put the parts that are lightest, and then the mid-tones, and the shadow or the dark tones. Okay, there. And then for the sky, I'm just gonna use blue, ultramarine blue. You can use any blue that you have on your palette, but preferably the ones that are light. Okay, so here I've added a lot of water on my mixing palette, and then blue. Okay, and then I'm gonna just paint the upper part like that. Okay, so this is so wet. Okay, and it's very light, so you barely see it. And then I'm gonna add very light pink here. It's Carmine, by the way. And then I'm just gonna put this here, following the contour of the mountain, and I'm just gonna do that. Okay, and then I'll add more blue because the blue is too light. So basically what I'm doing is almost mixing the colors, blue and pink, on the sky. Okay, let me add more blue. This time I got it straight from the palette, and because my brush is so wet, there you can already see the colors. So this is a sort of graded sky color from blue to pink. And then what I'll do is use my brush to get the colors, some of the colors, the sky colors of my trees. Okay, so I'm basically just lightening up these sections where I'm gonna be painting the cherry blossoms. Okay, and the next is to wet. While this is still wet, I'm gonna paint the foreground, which is this grassy area in front of the cherry blossom trees here. So I'm wetting my paper. So I'm using 100% Baohong artist grade paper. I love this paper. That's why I'm using this today for today's tutorial or class. Okay, asynchronous class. And then I'm gonna use warm yellow. So this is cadmium yellow, and I'm gonna mix that with French ultramarine blue. But I want this to be a little bit on the yellow green side here. Okay, and as you can see, the color is a bit muted green, but very light green. And then I'm just gonna paint this in areas where I see grassy sections, and it's actually practically covers most of the areas, except I sort of left some white patches also. And then I'm gonna grab my yellow ochre and mix that in here and put it there on the sections where I see that some of the soil or the ground is showing through the grass. Okay, and then I'm gonna strengthen the color, or I'm gonna add more blue to that. Same mix. There. And let's see, yellow. So I'm basically adding that here. And as you can see, this part here is lighter because I'm gonna add some flowers on those. So where I put those lines that depicts the plants or the bush, I'm gonna add darker green. Okay, but it's not as dark as I want it just yet. Okay, and then here also where the main cherry blossom tree is casting shadow, as well as here. So that's the first wash. Okay, so I'll leave this alone for a bit because this is still wet, and then I'm gonna add the pink of the cherry blossom tree. Okay, so I think the sky is too light, so I'm gonna add more blue here. So as you can see, with watercolor, I tend to put in lightest color first, and then just gonna build up the color as I see fit. As in this case, the sky color is the light, and I see it, as you can see, the paper is buckling up. Okay, so that's gonna affect the color later, or the distribution of colors, but let's just work on it like that. And then I added more blue just to strengthen the sky color. So with watercolor, it's best to paint lightest first, and then just add more shades of color later when you see fit, rather than, you know, just going overboard and darkening your color on the first wash. It's better to paint the lightest wash first. And then for cherry blossom, as you can see, the color is actually very light pink. It's almost white in some sections. So what I'm gonna do is, and this is for people with John Brilliant, so I'm gonna mix my pink here with John Brilliant. If you don't have John Brilliant, you can add gouache, white gouache, or white poster color, or white what you call this, white watercolor into this to make your color lighter. So the idea is to make the lightest pink possible. You can also just add plenty of water for your pink. That can be done also, but I want my color to be a little bit orangey, you know, peachy, something like that. Okay, so that's why I use John Brilliant. But again, if you don't have John Brilliant, you can just add white. If you also have pastel color, that's white, pink rather. Let me just grab my bigger version. This is my tiny palette. So if you have rose quartz, white nights, rose quartz pastel, watercolor, you can also use that. But here I've decided to use pink and John Brilliant. If you don't have, again, John Brilliant, you can just use white. Okay, then I'm just gonna paint that over here. And if you notice, this part of my paper of the sky is still wet because of the water that I have added, the wash that I've added. And if you notice, I'm taking advantage of that so that my pink will spread over onto the sky, but not so much. Okay, like that. So basically, I'm just dropping in the colors here. So that's the beauty of doing this wet and wet, because you're just allowing the colors to just, you know, flow. And you notice those dendritic patterns, like root-like patterns, which I want for my tree. And if you notice also, the color is so light. You can hardly see it on the camera, I think. So that's also intentional. And then for this part here, just gonna wet this part of the second tree there, so that I can have the same effect for my second cherry blossom tree. Okay, and feel free to pause this video if I'm going too fast, since this is a recording anyway, so this is not an actual class. So you can just, so I'm mixing the same colors, pink carmine, or carmine pink, and John Brilliant. And I'm just gonna add that here. Okay, if you notice here, I didn't add much branches. I didn't draw in the branches because I don't want to overwhelm you with too much details. We're gonna add those branches later. Okay, so as you notice, I'm also adding in white spaces in between. Okay, Okay, it's like that. So this, because this is wet, we're practically just dropping in the colors and letting the colors do its magic. So I'm gonna add more Jaune Brilliant here because I noticed that okay, just a little bit of pink and then Jaune Brilliant, and then I'm just gonna add those peachy color on the sections that I feel are peachy colors. It's basically mostly at the top section of the cherry blossom trees. And I'm gonna do the same on the other tree, by the way. So how do I mix that again? I use Carmine Pink and Jaune Brilliant. Just 2 colors. So maybe I should adjust my rug because my arm is blocking the view whenever I need to whenever I need to dry my brush. There you go. So again, I'm mostly adding the peachy color on the top section where the cherry blossom trees are the brightest. And you can, adjust the color according to how you want it to look or appear on your painting. This is your art. If you are painting with me, feel free to adjust. So I'm just painting wet on wet, and if you notice again, the color is basically flowing, and I am adjusting the ratio of Jaune Brilliant and pink as I paint. Okay, so that you don't paint with just one color or one mix. Okay, so that's how I add variation in the color of the flowers for my cherry blossom paintings. Okay, so it's starting to look like a tree, but take note that this is only second layer. Okay, and I am really no longer following the pattern of the flowers on the reference photo because I think that's too restrictive. So I'm just gonna paint the flowers, dabbing the brush like this. Okay, so let's just leave this alone for a bit because we're losing the white spaces already because I'm adding more colors. And I'm gonna, while this is still wet, I'm gonna add more mid-tone green on this. And for that, I'm just gonna grab my sap green and mix that with the blue here. Okay, that's on my palette. So this is sap green, and I'm just gonna strengthen the color on my bushes. Okay, and if you notice, I'm doing this thing with my brush where I just move it like that. Okay, so just to highlight the shape of the bushes. Okay, like that. So I feel that my color is too light, so I'm gonna add more sap green on my mixing palette and add a bit of blue. And I am no longer adding water or wetting my brush because this particular brush, this sable, holds water a lot, so holds a lot of water. So I'm taking advantage of that property of sable brush. But if you're using synthetic brush, I guess the effect would be different. And then I'm just gonna add a darker here. So that's blue. That's basically just blue. And then I'm adding green again. Sap green. Again, this is just sap green and French ultramarine blue. So I'm basically adjusting the colors, the ratio of blue and green on this one. There. Then here also. Okay, medyo dry na yung dito sa side na to. And then here. Okay. And then I'm doing this thing with my brush where it's like that, so that we'll have this grass-like feature on this side. So again, this is a sloping terrain, and there should be grass-like feature along this part of the sketch. That's why I'm doing that. And then let me just add that shadow part here. We're gonna strengthen that shadow of this particular tree. And then I haven't drawn really the mountain behind the trees, but as you can see, there's already pink on this side. So we're gonna fix that by painting a sort of yellow ochre for now. Yellow ochre here. Just gonna grab my yellow ochre, and I'm gonna paint that straight on here, just so I know where my mountain. Okay, here. And don't worry, I'm also painting over the tree, but don't worry, there's a reason behind it. The tree is going to be dark anyway, so I'm painting over it. And there. And it's okay if the green is bleeding into the yellow ochre. The tree behind, or rather the mountain behind the cherry blossom trees. So this is the mountain, okay? Mountain behind the cherry blossom trees. Okay, so I'm adding that here. That's the background. Okay, there. And then just to add some interest into that, I'm gonna add blue into the green, the previous green that and then I'm just gonna, okay, so I'll explain why I did that. So basically, the blue will sort of add some texture into the mountain behind this tree, cherry blossoms. And then the reason also is that I want some sort of contrast between the mountain behind and this foreground right here. Okay, so that's the reason why I did that. Okay, so there. So I just added blue just to emphasize that this is a different mountain. It's not connected to this foreground. Okay, so let's just leave that alone because it's still wet. This is just a second layer of our painting. This is the ugly face of the painting. If your painting doesn't look like this, don't worry because it's not yet done. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you how to add more colors to this, and this time I'm gonna be using a stronger pink here. And this pink has less water, so my brush is not that wet anymore. So I'm adding pink here, and then I'm basically so this is the first bunch of flowers. The darker or the mid-tone would be somewhere in the middle of those bunches that I have identified in the drawing. Okay, so that would be this part. So I'm adding it here, just here. We will add more flowers at the top section later, but right now this is mid-tone pink. Okay, okay, so my my paper is still wet, that's why the colors is spreading. Okay, so basically by doing this, I am already identifying the sections where you have mid-tone. Okay, there. Right. So as you can see, the pink here has faded a bit. So I'm gonna add the same pink. I'm gonna add. Wait, let me just grab my watercolor and put it here. John Brilliant. Again, not much water for this, so the color is slightly creamy. And then I'm just gonna add, okay, that. So again, this one has Jaune Brilliant, or if you have white, go ahead and use white. And then I'm gonna add the same mix, pink and Jaune Brilliant, at the top of this bunch of flowers here. Okay. There. There. Okay. I'm gonna add more Jaune Brilliant. Changing my ratio again of pink and Jaune Brilliant for this one naman. Okay, you can also use dry brush effect for this. You just unload some of the water on your brush, okay, and then just do this. Let's see if it's gonna work. Okay, so not so much on this. You can also do that, because this paper is no longer that wet. So I'm just gonna do this motion here, sort of, and then it's like dry brush technique. So I'm taking advantage of the texture of my paper, like that. Okay, so see the difference between dry brush and just dropping the color while still wet. Okay, and then this color right here doesn't have mid-tone yet. Or let me just add more Jaune Brilliant. Okay, again, just to get that peachy color. And then just maybe I should choose a smaller brush for this. But you get the idea, right? So let me just grab my smaller, or my synthetic brush. I'm just gonna wet it a bit. And now I'm gonna use my synthetic brush. So synthetic brush doesn't hold much water, and I find that advantageous in this what you call this, in this case, because since it doesn't hold much water, I can do this like that. I can just, you know, give that texture for the small petals of the flowers, like that. So if you're using synthetic brush, so this is going to be advantageous for you. Okay, and then I'm gonna do the same. And not a lot of, I didn't load much water on this, just the color straight from the palette. I just wet my brush just a bit so that I could grab the color there. So again, I'm using synthetic brush to give me that sort of texture for the tiny flowers. There. Okay. So let's just leave that alone for a bit. Let that dry for a bit, and then we'll add more greens to the foreground. Okay, and this time I'm getting the color straight from the palette, from my palette here. I'm getting sap green, and that I'm adding that texture of leaves, or rather the stems of plants or bush with yellow flowers, bushes on the foreground. And there. And if you notice, the longest stems would be on this section, nearer to you, to the one painting. And then there would be this ones in the middle would be shorter. And then here there will be, the grass or the bushes would have shorter stems, okay? And I realized that I have been doing this rather linear, like they're aligned like that. So let's put some random greens here, patches, and then just to depict that there are other plants growing on the sections. And then I will grab my burnt sienna and just add some sort of colors here to make the greens, the bushes a bit warm, and parang ano din, may pick din ng soil. Okay, then here para mas ano siya, organic. Okay, so I'm putting those brown or the burnt sienna at the bottom of the bush, the green bush that I had painted initially. Okay, para lang may warmth. Ayan. So notice how I'm doing with my brush. I'm like separating the hair and just doing that motion in the direction of growth of those bushes. And then let's add some blue. We're gonna add some blue for the darkest part of, for the shadow part of the bushes. Okay, so I'm using blue, and that alone, those blue will mix with the brown and green that we have added on our paper, and that will organically make some sort of shadow. Okay, underneath the bushes. Okay, and then there's supposed to be a shadow here, so I'm just gonna dab some color. So basically it's blue and green, and I'm just gonna dab these colors here, this blend of color here rather, just to depict that this part is actually the shadowed section, that's the shadow that is being cast by the cherry blossom tree. Okay, so to make to add flowers, we're gonna use again the synthetic brush that I have here. Again, this is just a synthetic brush, cheap synthetic brush. This I'm just gonna grab this yellow, it's cadmium yellow. Okay, and straight from the palette there. Okay, so I'm adding those yellow flowers on the foreground using my synthetic brush. And then from at this point, I'm gonna make it a bit smaller because essentially this part should be smaller because it's farther away from this part. Okay, so here I'm gonna make them bigger like that. Okay, it's like that, and then here just smaller tiny bits of the yellow flowers. Okay, and again remember, I'm getting the colors straight from the palette using my synthetic brush. Okay, and then just to add some sort of variation in the color, I'm grabbing this orange here and mixing it with the yellow. Again, I'm getting the color straight from the palette. Okay, And then I'm just gonna add that right beside yellow flowers, just to add some shadows on the yellow flowers. Okay, there. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is to grab burnt sienna, okay, and cover this section, because I'm gonna spatter on the foreground with colors, the same colors that I use for my foreground, which is I covered my cherry tree because I don't want any of the foreground colors getting spattered on. Okay, so just a bit of the brown. Okay, and then I'm also gonna spatter with burnt sienna. So this is this color, burnt sienna, just to add some texture on my foreground. Okay, so spattering is one way of adding colors on your painting without, you know, overworking it. Okay, and then next that I'm gonna spatter on is green. Okay, just green. I'm gonna add that in some sections. Okay, so I'm just allowing the colors to mix. Okay, and then just for good measure, so that for example, some of the cherry blossoms have fallen on the ground, just some amount of pink. So as you see, I have spattered my foreground with pink, green, yellow ochre, and burnt sienna. Okay, so because I want that effect there. And then we're gonna fix, if some need fixing later, so just allow this to dry, we will fix those. Okay, but this is the foreground already. And then I'm just gonna add some color on the mountain behind this cherry blossom tree by adding just the blue color. Okay, to strengthen, or to rather to you know, because the color has faded, so I'm just adding more color to the mountain behind this cherry blossom tree. Okay, so just a bit of blue, the same color that I used for the sky. Okay, there. Okay, so that's the mountain behind this foreground and cherry blossom tree. Now for the cherry blossom trees, we're gonna add pink. So this is the pink with a bit of this is the previous mix of pink that we used a while ago, and then I'm gonna add blue to make this purple color, and this is going to be the shadow color of the cherry blossom. But here we're gonna use the synthetic brush again for the tree. Okay, for that texture. Okay, so let's see. So the paint is still the paper is still wet, but I am mixing just the pink and the blue for the shadow. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so I think, okay, let me just try it with my other brush. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so this paper is already too dry, so I'm just gonna grab my spray, because I want to paint there wet on wet. I want to paint here wet on wet. I'm just gonna spray with water, so that's just to wet this section because this is too dry already to work on. Okay, and then just okay there. Then using my smaller brush, just gonna add the shadow colors right beside the mid-tone pink. Okay, I hope you can still follow. Okay, and then here also. So if you notice, I'm just adding most of the purple where I see traces of my branches. Okay, because that's where I expect the shadow to be most to be positioned. Okay, so again, I'm using just the same pink and then just the same blue. Okay, and if you notice, the water is flowing because the color is flowing because I sprayed it with water just to keep the colors flowing, because I don't want to work on this wet on dry. I want to work on this wet on wet. Okay, and I want to lighten this part because there should be two trees and they should be separable from view. So I'm lightening this part by grabbing a tissue and getting this part lighter than this one. So this one is darker in value. Okay, and while that is still wet, I'm just gonna grab my dry towel. So I'm grabbing a dry towel here, and then this towel here, and I'm gonna spatter on this while this is still wet using John Brilliant and pink. Okay, wait, that's dirty, so let me just remove this part, and then I'm gonna grab John Brilliant and pink, and then John Brilliant. Okay, here. Then I'm just gonna spatter this part there. And let's see how the water will flow, or the colors will flow there. And then you can also actually use this synthetic brush to make a sort of directional spattering. So let me just mix my John Brilliant this time, mostly John Brilliant, with a bit of pink, and then look, see how I'm going to do that. Okay, wait, it's not working. Wait, I think it's too dry. So let's add a bit of water, and then there you go. Okay, so for directional spattering, you can use this type of brush. Okay, then here also. So basically, I am mixing the colors through spattering. And now you have that effect on the trees. Okay, so I'm not gonna touch it. I'm gonna let this dry for a bit. And I'm gonna darken this part so that I separate the second tree from this one. Okay. I'm gonna try this part, but while I'm waiting for that to happen, I'm gonna paint the main trunk of the tree using this color. Okay, so this is just burnt sienna, and I'm gonna paint that here. Okay. So I'm not gonna extend to the branches yet because this is still wet. Just gonna paint in the, okay, this one is wet, so it's okay. So let's just wait for a bit for this to dry. While I'm waiting for this to dry, I want to add more yellow to this. So let me just cover this part. Okay, just this part, and then I'm gonna add yellow via spattering. Okay, so as you can see, there's a good mix of color on this now. But the green seems to be not so well distributed yet. So just to add balance, I'm gonna add more green. Okay, using my synthetic brush. Okay, that's two ano. So I'm using my synthetic brush for this, just to add more green. Okay. And then more green spattered on this there. Okay. I'm actually having fun spattering, if you notice. So yeah, there. So see, that's very loose foreground. So let's wait for this to totally dry, because otherwise we won't be able to add the branches for this one, because this is still wet. Okay, I'll be back after this has dried. Hi, I'm back. So I noticed that, okay, so let me just show you my foreground. If you notice, I lost some of the stems of the bushes, so we're just gonna add that by grabbing green color and blue, just to darken the green. Okay, there. And I'm just gonna literally draw very thin lines where I see some yellow, okay, so that those yellow flowers don't look like they're floating. Okay, and this detail will just be added. I will just add the details here on this section. Okay, this part of my foreground, right? Okay, so this is already sort of detailing. Okay, and then here also just a little bit, not too much. Okay, same color. Okay, so detailing part na tayo. Okay, okay, and then here I lost my shadow for the shadow that is being cast by the cherry blossom, this main cherry blossom. We'll add that later, but let me just add more of that grassy outline here. Okay, and they're shorter, by the way, because they're sort of edge of this foreground. Okay, like that. And then I'm just gonna add the same color for the flower, which is yellow, but I'm gonna use where is my synthetic brush? I think I lost a synthetic brush. Okay, let me just find, wait lang po. So alright, I lost my other synthetic brush. It's somewhere below my table, I think. So I just grab another one, and then I'm just gonna add more yellow here. Okay, so if you notice, I'm adding very small yellow details here, just to show that there are grasses right at the edge of this part of the foreground. Okay, just to be more consistent also with the rest of the foreground. Okay, so and then I'm just gonna add more here. There. Ay, that's the shadowed part pala. Okay. Then bigger here. Okay, so I'm basically just adding more yellow. Okay, if you're happy with your foreground already, that's totally fine. I just thought I'd adjust some more because they're lighter. They dried lighter, so that's the thing with watercolor. They dry very light. So now I'm gonna add the shadow color for this one. So basically the shadow color is just a combination of blue and green again, but the blue is sort of stronger. A little bit of green, and we're just gonna make the shadow appear like it's darkened grass. Okay, grass detail. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna cover some of that yellow here. I like that. Okay, just like that. Okay, all right. So that's the shadow. Now for the tree, I'm gonna add blue. Okay, so that's gonna mix with the burnt sienna, and the tree will appear sort of gray. So that's the intention, really. So there you go, and I'm just gonna do that. The same here also, I'm gonna add blue and some burnt sienna because this part has already dried. So I'm just gonna mix again burnt sienna and blue, and then I'm just gonna draw in the branches. Okay, so I'm gonna, my intention now is to basically draw in the branches where they might be visible through the flowers. Okay, so let's just connect some of those. Okay, and then here also. Again, that's just combination of blue and burnt sienna. Blue and some of the green, and then burnt sienna. Okay, until I have sort of grayish color that's a little bit brownish gray, something like that. Okay, so just gonna connect that, and please take note that when you're drawing branches, especially for this particular tree, make sure that they're a little bit they're not really that straight. Okay, so make use of the very pointy end of your brush to draw in the branches. And alternatively, you can also use a special type of brush, which is rigger brush, if you have that. Okay, and then gonna add the same. I have sort of lost my drawing for my branch, but I'm trying to see through all those pink that I have laid down. Okay, here also. So it doesn't have, you don't have to follow the original drawing. You just have to be just have to draw in some of the branches. Okay, and then don't worry, later we're gonna cover some of these branches with another layer of pink, but this time lighter pink. So we're gonna use sort of pastel pink for, okay. And then don't forget that there would be some branches sticking out at the top of the tree. Don't forget to draw that in because that's pretty that can be common in cherry blossom trees. Okay, so I think I'm okay with this. Let me just add this part because it looks floating. Okay, there. And then now, here's the detailing part for the cherry blossom tree. We're gonna add pink. So how do we do the lightest pink again? You can use John Brilliant and pink. But this time, I'm gonna make use of pastel pink, and we can do that by using my pastel pink or by mixing. Okay, let me just show you how to mix your pastel pink. And I'm gonna use this mix here. And I'm just gonna add white. Okay, let me just show you how to mix that. So I have here poster color, sakura. So see, same. Sakura is a Japanese term for cherry blossom. And I'm grabbing that white and just adding it here. So that's very, very thick. Okay, and then so see, the pink has already mixed with the white that I've added, white poster color, and then I'm just gonna grab some pink there. So now I have pastel pink, and then I'm gonna guess what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be doing. Actually, just gonna spatter. Okay. Oops. Okay. Okay, I made a mistake. I should use my synthetic brush. So there's this mistake there. I'm just gonna use synthetic brush for directional spattering like that. Okay. So here again, I'm using synthetic brush to have that fine mist of color, like that, fine spatter of color there. And don't worry, we're gonna add darker tone later because we don't want this to appear like powdery pink all over. So there. So I made a mistake there. I'm gonna pick that up and then just gonna there. Just gonna do that. Sorry about that, but you get the idea, right? So I'm basically just adding this pastel pink over here using poster color and watercolor that's pink. And I want this to be lighter than this one, so this one has more white than pink. So let me just grab pink again, and I will I'll clean my brush first before I get pastel white. And here, if you notice, this is darker pink. Okay, this I'm just gonna add that here. Okay, there. So I'm using this brush here. Alright, so again, I'm doing the spattering, and then now I'm gonna grab that color using my synthetic brush and just painting some sort of highlights on there. So bear with me, but basically what I did here in this painting is do a lot of spattering. It's actually fun, at least for me. So I hope that you'd also have fun painting this cherry blossom. Now that I've added those pink, let me just grab some pink again, but this time darker pink, and just add it in between those white for shadow. Okay. Yun lang. I'm gonna add, and then I'm just gonna adjust the color by adding a little bit of blue, and then wait, so I'm using again synthetic brush for this, and then very lightly dabbing in the dark shadow color in between those pink bunches. Okay, so it's important that we try to balance the color, the light colors, and the mid-tone and shadow colors. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm basically adding the shadow colors for the cherry blossom. And then I'm gonna make this part here a bit darker than the rest of this tree, because I want a sort of separation between the second tree and this first tree here, right? Alright, so there. And then I'm gonna add more pastel pink this side to separate the both trees. Okay, so I'm gonna grab the pink straight from my palette. This is pastel pinks, the same mix lang basically of white and pink. Okay, just to separate this tree from this one. Pink, and then some pink for shadow. So basically I'm adding two colors, the pink, darker pink, and then the pastel pink. There. So I hope I was able to separate those two. Okay, and let's see if that worked. Okay, let's see. All right, so I can see that there's you can see that there are spatters on this one, but I'm actually okay with that because it sort of also depicts that some of the bunches are falling off. You can say it like that. But if you're bothered by that, you can just grab your clean synthetic brush, basically just clean it, and then just use that color to add more highlights there. Okay, let me just grab this one, see if I can. Okay, there. Alright, so yeah, so that is my cherry blossom tree. You can feel free to adjust according to your preference. So you can add more bunches here sa top na medyo nag-aano sila, medyo may parang distribution sila like that. You can also do that. But if you do that, just like I'm doing here, if you're going to follow that, make sure that you're also adding some sort of tiny branch picking through the tree, okay, like that, to make it more organic. Okay, there, see, so I'm adding more tiny branches at the top of the tree, and then some sort of shadow here for the branches that are hidden behind branches of behind this bunch of flowers. Okay, so yeah, yun lang. Okay, so for the branch, the tiny branch, I just added a blue and burnt sienna. Okay, to make it a bit gray. Okay, so if you notice, I don't really mix I don't often use gray, just mix them using brown and there. Okay, so I'm just adding those branches, tiny branches that are peeking through at the top, or peeking out of the top or crown of the tree. Okay, there. So I think I'm done just adding these tiny details here, and I hope you were able to follow. So if I'm going to summarize the technique, I basically just did a lot of spattering for the foreground and for the cherry blossom tree. So I used various shades of pink by adjusting the ratio of this color, which is John Brilliant and pink. But again, in place of John Brilliant, you can always use white. Okay, so I used poster white color for this one. Okay, and then I think I'm ready to sign my artwork. Let me just grab my pen. So here, there, so I've signed it, and I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. It's rather long because I did a lot of spattering, but basically I did the spattering just to add some texture on the foreground and on the cherry blossom tree. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you will be able to paint along with me after you've watched this recording. Bye for now.